Welcome to Customer Success Matters, the podcast where we delve into the importance of ensuring customer success is at the heart of your business and the effect it can have on your growth. I'm your host, Jo Rogers, and every couple of weeks I'll be providing short, concise, thought-provoking insights to help you transform your retention and growth of clients. Here at Customer Success Matters, we bring you over 20 years of client management, both from an agency and client perspective, pulling on our own real-life examples, as well as interviewing relevant subject matter experts, all to provide you with the tools and knowledge on how to service your clients at a premium standard, build an exceptional client services team, and ultimately grow your business. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any episodes, and follow us on LinkedIn for more updates and behind-the-scene content. Now let's jump into today's topic. Today, I'm really pleased to have with me David Plunkett, founder of Collaboration Junkie. Like with many of my guests, Dave is passionate about helping businesses grow sustainably through their current clients. Dave, do you want to give the listeners a quick overview of what you do?
Yeah, so for most businesses, word of mouth referrals is where they get most of their business from, or new leads from, but it's probably the area of marketing and lead gen that gets the least amount of time devoted to it in terms of putting a proper strategy and process behind the stuff. And so that's what I help brands with. I help them get more referrals from their clients and customers and work better with referral partners. So I help people identify, nurture and scale those things through having the right confidence and the right skills and the right systems and processes.
You know, it's funny you say that actually, because I was recently reading a report that stated that 45% of agencies specifically cite referrals as the most effective way of picking up new clients, but only 66% of those agencies haven't implemented a strategic strategy to increase the number of those referrals, which means that agencies are reliant on referrals, but aren't proactively increasing the quality and quantity of those referrals. So Dave, why do you think agencies are shying away from asking their clients for referrals?
Right. So there's two things that I think the myriad of responses that people normally give me as to why they don't have proper strategy behind it typically fall into one of two things. And it's either systems and processes. So they say they forget, or people say they don't have time, which is ridiculous because it takes 30 seconds, right? So people forget systems and processes, or it's, I call it the ick. People feel a bit icky doing it, and it's a mindset piece, right? And there's various things that come into that. Fear of rejection can be one, imposter syndrome, all sorts of things. But a big one I hear, particularly in agency space, is that people are afraid that it will kind of push their customers away, that their existing customers will think that they think that they're not longer good enough or something. And and the funny thing is, Joe, is I think nothing could be further from the truth, because actually people love to make introductions. It's inbuilt within us. If you think about the last time you made an introduction, you hear it goes, well, it feels great, right? So people's clients want to do it and will do it, but it actually brings them closer to the brand, because every time a client refers you, they're putting their reputation on the line. And so that actually brings them closer to you, because they're just putting more and more trust in you as their agency of choice. So that for me, it's kind of, it really ties in with customer retention more than anything, as well as new business. There's a real customer retention piece there.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's the same. Referrals is the same as just asking clients how they feel about your agency. You know, asking for that, just that general feedback. It's amazing how many agencies really do feel like they don't want to hear the answer, but that answer can produce so much, especially referrals from a positive perspective. And I actually recently did a report asking clients about, their views and perceptions on agencies. And 100% of those that filled in my report said that they would refer their clients at their agencies, obviously, as long as they've done a good job, but they would 100% of them would refer them. So It's, as you're saying, it's mad that they think, oh, I don't want to ask just in case, but think what would happen if you did ask, isn't it? It's one of those things. So Dave, in terms of that, what are those sort of common misconceptions that people have around asking for referrals?
So I think there's a thing that referrals can only get you so far. And I don't believe that to be true. Yes, the bigger the bigger introductions you're looking for, the more important it is for you to have all the other marketing elements, social proof, all that stuff, right? But actually, the agencies I work with, even as they get bigger and they invest more in kind of more hands-off marketing, for want of a better word, if they still look back at the end of the year as to where the best new clients have come from, all their favorite clients, it's typically still through word of mouth. So it's just about kind of I believe it's about being honest about this stuff and going, well, let's make the most of it and have a proper strategy behind it. And I think it's about, the other thing is that it's sales. And back to that thing about it being so closely linked with customer success is that it's not. And because I think the minute it's treated as a sales activity, people get all formal about it. And that's when it gets icky. Like people almost take a deep breath before they ask for an introduction. If you want to know a good teleseries to watch, you ask a friend, right? And you've got no issue in recommending, and you've got no in that kind of asking for recommendations. And that's what asking for a introduction from one of your clients should feel like. It should feel like asking a favor from a friend. And the minute you kind of reframe it as something that's just part of day-to-day activity, which it is, it's been going on since time began, and you become more casual about it, and it gets dropped into conversation rather than like, going to take a deep breath and ask for a referral now, and it's going to feel really awkward. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that it should just feel natural, and it should just be. I talk a lot about building cultures of referrals where everyone who's customer facing feels kind of confident and empowered to be able to ask for introductions, and then they become more scalable because it's not reliant on on an agency founder to be doing it all. And if you're the person that's had the referral into you, then that client probably still wants you to be more involved than maybe you'd like to be if you're trying to scale your agency. And so I think it's that whole piece around it being salesy and actually inhibits the ability for it to be used as something to scale.
It goes hand in hand with the client relationship piece, doesn't it? You know, the more you've shown value to your clients and the clients trust you and you've built that relationship with your client, actually asking a referral, as you say, is sort of second nature, isn't it? It shouldn't have that feeling of ickiness. I think that when the ickiness is there, for me, I think that's because you haven't done that, where you're not having those type of conversations with your clients. You're talking about reaching out to a client to ask for a referral when that communication piece isn't there, and they're not a close client. And I think that's the bit where it feels, if it feels icky, then I think you've been doing something wrong before even asking for that referral.
Yeah. I always say there's a healthy amount of ick. In like, am I being overly salesy here and all that sort of stuff? So there is and that probably comes into what you're saying there, Joe, right? Like, is it right? But we're still getting our own way too much with those ones that are right. So
yeah, for sure. So, what stage, Dave, should someone be asking for their clients for a referral? So obviously, you've onboarded a client and you just started the project with them. I'm assuming that's not the best time for you to be asking for a referral, but is it where a lot of people think is right at the very end when you've finished the project, you've got to the end of it. Now is that the time for me to ask for a referral?
So there's a bunch of sales training out there that says the best time to ask is just after you've made the sale, because people are all excited and stuff, right? Now, I don't agree with that entirely, but it can be. There's only one person who's decided whether we have delivered enough value in order to make an introduction to someone else. And that is the person who's on the other end of it, right? The customer is the only person who really decides when we've delivered enough value. But that can happen at any point along the journey. And every customer journey is slightly different and every buying process is slightly different. But it is typically much earlier. And when I do talks to more generalist audiences, I still always use agency as a go-to reference around when I got my branding done. Now, I knew it was going to be good because I knew the agency owner, to count her as a personal friend. She came to my wedding and stuff, even though we met through work. So I knew it was going to be good. And I was really excited. When the first draft of all the kind of like, they'd taken the ideas and put them into something, when that came through, I get little goosebumps now when I think about it, because it was that, I call them wow moments. I was like at my most delighted, because when it was just so much more than I ever expected. A month down the line, when final brand assets were all delivered and all that, it was great, but it didn't match that earlier moment, because all they'd done then was delivered against my heightened expectations. The kind of the moment to either ask for an introduction or seed that, if I'm happy, will you be able to do one? Kind of the moment to bring it up was at that moment then when I was at my most delighted. And so when I work with people, one of the things I always get them to do is map out their customer journey from their very first contact with someone to potentially after they finished working with someone, because maybe and go, what are the different stages when you have these moments where clearly your audience think you've over delivered? And it going back to your point, Joe, around not doing some of the other stuff right, quite often it'll pull out an extra bit of client comms, because it's like, oh, if we're not in the room for when they have that moment, how can we speak to them and figure out a way of doing that? And so there isn't a one size fits all, but it's almost certainly earlier than most people are doing.
And you mentioned before, Dave, in terms of creating a culture of referrals within the agency or business that you've got.
Yeah.
So who's responsible then for these referrals? I know you talked about you don't want it to be just the responsibility of the founder or the CEO, which makes a lot of sense. So is this the responsibility, if we're talking about agencies, is this the responsibility of client services? Is it the responsibility of the sales director? Like, who's responsible for asking for these referrals?
I would suggest anyone who's stakeholder facing, because you can get, yes, we're talking kind of typically people think about getting referrals from clients, right? But anyone who's got a vested interest and relationship with your business is someone who could introduce you. If you've got suppliers that you've got a close relationship with, they will absolutely make introductions, because because they like you, and B, it doesn't do them any favors if they're doing more than just you become a more loyal customer, right? I'm not suggesting you speak to Microsoft and start asking for introductions, but do you know what I mean? We all have those relationships that are closer. So because of that, it's anyone who's stakeholder facing should have ideally will have the skills and the confidence, and the business will have the processes behind to support that. In reality, that isn't the case, right, Joe? There are always going to be some people that just don't feel as comfortable, and some that absolutely run with it. But the ability should be there for all. And I think, let's say we're talking, whether it's agency or growing business, let's say there's 10 people in your business, right? There is still a good chance at that size that the founder is still going to have to get involved in the sales process, right? But if the original introduction hasn't come in directly from them, it's immediately just setting the tone a little bit more that this isn't me as the founder with the support team. It's a team operation here, right? And so I think the people at the top of the business help set and lead the culture, but the actual implementation of it in terms of this piece is something that everyone should feel comfortable with.
And it's interesting because a lot of what we're talking about here, Dave, is referrals from current clients. But do you advocate or put it within systems to actually look at referrals from known contacts outside of your current clients? So maybe that's someone that you used to work with, or a friend, that works in a company that might be able to do that, or past clients. Like, do you look outside of just your current clients?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because that's where there's absolute gold. It can be your prospects. If you've got long-standing prospects that you've built a really good relationship with, they just haven't quite clicked over into client yet, well, then that doesn't mean they're not more than willing and ready and able to refer you to other people who are ready to use your services right now. And yeah, previous clients, and not just previous clients, previous contacts. So the amount of times that where people move to another business and people don't think to kind of follow that and trace that along. And things like, I call them internal referrals as well. So where you're working with larger clients, do you have a proper strategy around how you can get introduced to different departments, different geographical locations, that type of thing? Because it's all linked and it's all the same. It's all within the same skill set. It's just you need a slightly different way of doing it. And often those type of ones are where the lowest hanging fruit is. Actually, there's immediate opportunities. I think we would all like to think that people would do this stuff anyway because they know us and they like us, but they don't it's not because they don't want to. People are busy, right? We're all busy, which means and sometimes I've had it with me. People go, "Oh, I didn't realize you wanted introductions." People will go, I thought you might be too busy," and so you have to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get, essentially. And where it is happening organically, the minute you take control over it, you take control about the quality of the referrals, because I'm sure everyone listening has had calls or even clients they've taken on that they wouldn't have normally looked for, but they felt obliged because they came via an introduction, right? The minute you take proactive control of this thing and you're actually asking, you're able to be a bit more descriptive about who you want an introduction to. So you not only get more referrals, but you get better referrals because you're able to articulate what you want a little bit more. So,
and so we're talking about this with the ultimate view that someone's going to say yes to a referral. What happens when a client or a stakeholder or someone that you know doesn't, or stonewalls you or something like that? Like, is there any tips that you give of advice on dealing with a knockback of a referral? Do you think that it highlights an issue, or, what's your view on when you don't get a yes for a referral, which I appreciate is probably very rare?
Yeah, it's quite rare. It is a rare scenario. So I think there's two separate ones here. There's reasons within each. So if it's a no, right, you ask and someone says no, one of two things is either going on. Either they're not happy enough with your service to do it, and that's all sorts of other issues there, right? Or, and this does happen sometimes, if someone sees you as their competitive advantage, they don't want to introduce you to other people that could harm them, right? And that's where, if you know that you're in a space like that, where it's a highly competitive, maybe there aren't many players in the market and they're unlikely to do that, that's where being more proactive can help, because you get a little cleverer around what you ask for an introduction for. Is there a different vertical that isn't going to in any way affect them? And so it's normally one of those. They're the only two reasons why someone would say no.
Yeah, I've also heard of a no because they don't want to share you as an agency. So It's a weird, it's a compliment no. It's I don't want, whether it's the client feels that you don't have the internal resources to be able to take on more. But I have experienced scenarios where clients don't want to pass you on to someone else because they kind of want to keep you and your skills to themselves.
Yeah, coaches, anyone in the coaching space can get this, particularly in the UK, where asking for help is not exactly seen as a sign of strength that it is in other cultures. I've worked with a bunch of coaching clients who their problem is that people aren't always confident enough to go, "Oh yeah, I worked with this person because I really needed help and now I'm happy to refer," right? So there are all sorts of things at play there. If it's just complete stonewall, then I would nudge again, or I'd pick up the phone and ask someone. So I would always, if you can speak to someone in person, I would always do that rather than just do the email. But if someone said, "Yeah, of course," and then they don't, then something that I would always do is see if there's anything you can do to help. Like, can you make it more specific for them? Is there anything? Sometimes people won't do the final step because they're not quite sure how to actually do the words, how to position you. And so going back to people and kind of offering to help with that can be the thing that unlocks it, essentially asking if you can help. Because the easier you make it for someone, the more likely they are to do it.
So on the topic of making it easy, Dave, got lots of people listening today, or at some point when they're listening. What's the thing that they can do now? There's some actionable advice from you right now to take away from this podcast. What can they do to start the process of asking for referrals?
Okay, so the number one thing is to kind of remember that thing that people do. The vast majority of people do love to make introductions. It is inbuilt into our nature, into our DNA. That connecting of people is right within a tribal instinct. So first and foremost, it's trying to get over that ickiness. But in terms of being successful, the best thing you can do is to be specific in what you're looking for. Because the more specific you are in your request, the easier it is for the other person to think of that person. And it's look, we're in a culture of mini dopamine hits, whether it's from our phone or from social media or whatever it may be. But if you're vague in what you ask for, like, do you know, if you speak to anyone or you know anyone that might like our services, I'd love an introduction, right? If you're that vague, then you ask 10 clients, 10 people in your network, all 10 will say yes. But you're lucky if you'll get 3 that do it, and you'll be even luckier if any of them are the people that you really want to speak to. The minute you're more specific, you might get a few more no's, like, I don't know anyone in that space, but the people that do, but the yeses will be much more concrete. Like, you might only get 6 yeses, but 5 will do it and they'll be the right people, right? And there's 2 ways of being specific. One is a very specific type of business, like a role within the business. Even better if you could pick out a name. LinkedIn's great for that kind of thing. Make it, if you know someone knows someone else, then that's the easiest introduction to ask for, because the person goes, yeah, of course, because it's there. The other thing that I think is really nice is I call it situational niching. So instead of it's this niche of a type of business, it's the situation they're in. So I always talk about when your ideal customer is going through whatever pain or opportunity you solve, what are they saying? Like, what are they, when they're out and about at events or in client meetings, what are they typically complaining about? Because people don't go around saying whatever's written on our websites. We'd love them to say that they're looking for a proactive accountant or whatever it may be, right? But they don't. People don't talk in that language. So it's thinking about, and if you struggle with this, ask your clients. Because then you can say, if when you're out and about, you hear insert business saying these types of things, then I'd love an introduction, and you can say how you help. And they act as little mini stories, little mini triggers that sit in your network's brains, so that even if they can't make an introduction right then, 3 weeks time when they're at an event and they hear someone saying those words, they go, oh, I should put you in touch with Jo. She's amazing. She'd help with that. So that would be my things to get specific.
Man, that's really great advice. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much for being on the podcast. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I mean, it ties so closely into what I talk about in terms of making sure that we are servicing clients properly and appropriately, and the teams really understand how to capitalize on opportunities. And one of those is obviously asking for referrals as well. So thank you so much for taking the time today to talk to me. And I very much hope that those that are listening are already starting to think about who they are going to ask and think about what that process they might need to be putting into place for those teams to be asking for those referrals. But obviously, if anyone needs any more help, do look up Dave and Collaboration Junkie. And thanks very much again, Dave. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for listening, everyone.